Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bree Kirsch, and I'll be the moderator for this closing keynote titled A Framework for AI Pragmatism. Before we begin, I did want to thank you for attending the second Gale conference. Thanks to Virginia Tech for hosting our conference on Zoom. We hope to continue offering this conference in the future. Please take a few minutes to complete the conference evaluation, which I am pasting in the chat just now. So hopefully you can access that. So take a few minutes to complete the conference evaluation survey at the end of the conference and let us know in that survey if you want to join our planning committee next year. Please continue the conversations about libraries and AI via our Google group, galecon@googlegroups.com, which I've also posted in the chat. And shortly, I will also post our code of conduct information in the chat as well for those that may need to review it again. And if you do have any concerns, contact us at galeconferencesupport@googlegroups.com. There will be time for questions partway through Michael's presentation and also at the end, time permitting. So please add your questions to the Q&A so I can see them and keep track of them. This session is being recorded. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. It is my pleasure to introduce Michael Flierl, who is the Student Learning Librarian and an Associate Professor at the Ohio State University Libraries. In his role, Michael's work and research focuses on how students can more intentionally, creatively, and ethically use information and data to learn, including AI technologies. Please join me in welcoming Michael Flierl.
Thanks so much, Bree, for the nice welcome. And before I get started, actually, I'd like to send a hearty congratulations. I hope everyone could join me in congratulating Bree and the rest of the planning committee for running an outstanding online conference. I can't imagine how difficult that was. I know I learned a lot. I think it was fantastic. Thank you, Bree, for the invitation, and just thank you for allowing us to engage with something so important in this type of way. So without further ado, time is short. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A and interaction. As Bree said, I'm Michael Flierl. I'm an associate professor at the Ohio State. It's starting to sound fun, so I'm leaning into it now. Yeah, and I have really, I just consider myself an AI practitioner. So I've consulted with the DoD on AI. I'm a co-founder of an AI startup, but really I'm a librarian. I'm an information literacy professional, information literacy researcher who happens to have, hundreds, maybe 1,000 hours worth of experience, hands-on experience with generative AI. So I consider myself a librarian first, who happens to have some experience with AI. So today, I'm going to try to, I've kind of two goals. One, the first part is to kind of provoke different thinking about generative AI technology more broadly. So I'll have two provocations. And at the end, I'm going to try to articulate a challenge for us all. I'm including myself in that. And so I'm hoping to kind of end this, again, fantastic online conference about generative AI with a challenge, trying to spur you to action in a way that I think is going to be most productive for generative AI, shaping the future of generative AI that's in alignment with our values as information professionals, that supports free intellectual academic inquiry, freedom of speech, access to information, and kind of supporting a well-informed citizenry. So with that, I'm just going to very briefly get through some of the most recent developments in Gen AI. And Bree, if you can move forward, that would be great. And hit play. Here's a new video.
Is a force, a wild, untamed might. And she commands your awe with every breaking light.
So that's a video from VO3, which is one of the most recently released generative AIs that can create video. And I don't know about y'all, but remember when you can tell generative AI video when they had like wonky hands or like weird legs or something? But I mean, just getting the lighting and shadowing right on the water is impressive. The tone sounds realistic. I mean, look at his weathered sun-beaten face. I generally think it's impressive and it's an advancement, and I think it's important to conceive or to consider that generative AI does not just mean text. It means audio, it means video, it means a mixture of all of that. And we can't just have just text in mind when we think of generative AI. Next slide, please. So a recent report from Anthropic noted something called self-exfiltration. So this was kind of like safety testing or red teaming the newest Claude 4 model, I believe. And they found this behavior. I won't describe it. They did have to prod it. It wasn't totally organic. They were really testing its limits to see if what it would do if it was tasked to do something that the AI felt was against, or it considered to be against its core function. So previously seen in science fiction, this has been theorized by AI ethicists or AI safety experts for decades, and now we've actually seen it. And next slide, please, Bree. So this is my first provocation. No single framework can guide us. AI is complex. It is evolving. It is becoming multimodal. It is, as you'll see shortly, becoming cheaper, more embedded, more easy to use. Personally, it's very helpful and useful to have a framework, to have a singular reference point to understand something. And I understand that. I have that inclination too, but I will argue that in fact that can be detrimental to our approach to AI. It is so fast moving, it is so evolving so quickly, it is qualitatively different from other forms of information creation or technology. We really need to avoid simple, reductive, or clear-cut answers and really embrace uncertainty and complexity. Next, please. So a few facts to kind of back this up. Hardware costs are going down, generally speaking, around 30% annually. Energy efficiency is going up, although energy consumption is doubling every year. So that it's estimated by 2030, we're going to have generative AI is going to have the same power requirements, roughly, maybe even a little bit more, as the country of Japan. Okay, next, please. So the inference cost, that is the usage cost for something like a ChatGPT 3.5, which is out of date now. But from November 22 to October, 7-8 months ago, it was 280 times cheaper to run a ChatGPT 3.5 like 7-8 months ago than it was when it first started. The cost per million tokens has steadily declined. That means these models are becoming significantly cheaper to run. Oh, your screen went black there, Bree. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's a report I got this from, and I can share the let's see, which one is that? Oh, that's Stanford one. I'll share this in chat so you don't get out your phones. You just move on, Bree, if you can. Thank you. And then the next is going to be an Anthropic report. This is really interesting. So you'll often hear generative AI, at least the LLMs, are a fill-in-the-blank machine. This is a report from Anthropic again, directing or showing that it's not strictly a fill-in-the-blank machine. So you could see where the rabbit concept, that little box there in the top part, that's when Claude was like thinking about using the word rabbit. So it wasn't thinking about using the word rabbit after it had output his hunger was like a starving. It was thinking about rabbit after rabbit. So it was planning ahead. So this is indicative of something closer to more agentic AI, where the AI can more proactively plan ahead or do things without explicit instruction. And the bottom half, they said you can't use rabbit, and then it used something else instead. So kind of proving that it wasn't just coincidence or just the word rabbit that was special. So evidence against generative AI simply being a fill-in-the-blank machine. It is more than that. The current foundation models, that is the most advanced AI models, can plan ahead and do so. And here's how Claude attempts to add 36 plus 59. This is bizarro world. But basically, in the blue box, kind of in the top there, it says one path approximates the answer roughly. So it has all these parallel streams of thought. No one would add these numbers together like this. But generally speaking, in that top blue half, it says, okay, roughly the answer is going to be between 88 and 97. And in the bottom pink half, it says, okay, we're adding a number ending in 6, we're adding a number ending in 9, therefore the sum ends in 5. So if the number is between 88 and 97 and the number ends in 5, therefore the answer is 95. That's how Claude calculated this mathematical operation, which is just frankly bizarre, right? So this just goes to show, and this is basically the most recent major report on a large foundation AI model trying to get at explainability, trying to explain the inner workings of these models. And what we see is like they don't think like we think. They tend to, and it depends on the model, it depends on who trained it, depends on what the application is for. Is it for video? Is it for audio? Is it for translation? There's a whole slew, there's over 1 million plus open source models available. It's just not thinking the way we want to think. It's not how we think. And here's a link to this report. I would really recommend it. It's not too technical. And in fact, I think it gives genuine insight into how these models work. And I will also put this into the chat. So the second one, the second provocation is that we are the ideal candidates to create explainable human-centered AI. I think we kind of have a choice. We could either be, as information professionals, we can either be reactive to the most current development, or we could be proactive. We can determine the pace and change and the execution, the policy, and even the creation of these AI models. Creating AI models is becoming easier, cheaper, more widely available, or interacting with them. And so what I would like to provoke you to provoke you about is to consider how, yes, you might not feel very competent with AI. You might feel extremely vulnerable and feeling incompetent with it. Of course you would. Like, I'm not a computer scientist. I just have experience, and I still feel like a fraudster sometimes when I'm talking about AI. I just spoke yesterday to someone who was working at NVIDIA and Google about AI, and to be frank, his technical expertise was far beyond my understanding. That being said, I kind of refuse to let that mean that I, or that my values as an information professional, or that our values collectively shouldn't have a say in the future of AI. I think they should. I think we ought to. And I think we just kind of have to get over ourselves a little bit, get over our own feelings, suck it up, buttercup, as my old volleyball coach used to say, and find a way to contribute meaningfully to ethical, to explainable, to human-centered AI, to AI that's in alignment with our values, that furthers what we want to further, whether that be free speech, scientific inquiry, and informed citizenry, so on and so forth. So, okay, I will, that went quick. Okay, normally I'm a lot more long-winded about the current developments with AI. So I'm going to pause there, and we're going to have some time for Q&A. So please Bree, correct me if I'm wrong, but put your answers in the Q&A.
Yes.
Or questions.
We already have 3 questions for you in the Q&A.
Fantastic.
The first being, I read recently that your university requires every student to use generative AI. Is this accurate?
Yeah, I think the reporting on that's been kind of mixed. Recently, our provost, which is new, we also have a newer president as well, came out with an AI fluency initiative. Now, I saw in the newspapers it's being reported as mandating AI use, but I will say this, I was just in a 3-day workshop for our general education like launch course, which is like the one course every 7,000 students take at the beginning of their first year. across all OSU campuses, and AI will not be required to be used in that. It will be an opt-in model, not an opt-out model. And I've personally been trying to work on the inside along with many colleagues. I'm a peon really. There's dozens upon dozens of people working on this, but I've been trying to advocate for an opt-in model and for focusing on if students are going to be using AI, whether they choose to or not, to embrace metacognition, to embrace reflection, to look at, shout out to Stephanie Founds, who I think really, from OSU, who really motivated me to think of this way, to focus on the sociocultural ethical components. Basically, using AI isn't quite as important as understanding the surrounding context of how and why we should be using it. We need to be intentional, just like we need to be intentional with information or data, just like previous information literacy theory would dictate.
Great. And another question, why has AI gotten cheaper? What has actually changed to make them cheaper?
Great question. So you could think of it conceptually, neural networks, conceptually generative AI or deep learning neural networks, however you want to phrase it, or have whatever level of abstraction you want to work at. That's conceptually been around since the 1950s, almost since the beginning of computer science proper. What changed recently was GPUs, hardware. NVIDIA released the CUDA or some type of internal framework to allow much more powerful parallel processing and access to data, aka the internet. So compared with the attention is all you need, the transformer architecture for neural networks. Today, as of today, so we've been running generative AI stuff on functionally graphics cards that has been previously or designed for video games, and AI applications were like an afterthought. They were NVIDIA, and they have a tremendous moat with this, just kind of did it to see if we can get more researchers using it. Now, with like tensor processing units from Google and other hardware developments, we're designing hardware specifically designed for AI applications. Also, we're designing software specifically for these applications. There's a lot of, if you heard of DeepSeek and how cheaply, allegedly, they did that, it's up to debate if they imported NVIDIA chips illegally, but they used like a previous or two generation chips. But as a result of what's called model distillation, they took a big model and basically trained a smaller model. But the smaller model was able to basically be as effective as the larger model. So there's techniques, there's hardware, there's software, all aiming towards efficiencies in energy consumption and in training. All that is driving the cost down substantially, and it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon.
Okay, great. And which tools are best at generating video and audio?
Right now, video would be VO3. There's plenty of others, but it depends. That could change tomorrow, but currently that's the best one. Interestingly enough, it likely was trained on video game data, which I think is interesting. That's kind of, you'll hear of synthetic data being used. That's training AI on AI generated data. So it's kind of like an Erebos type thing. And they're running out of data, so they have to, the creator of DeepMind or AlphaFold, Dennis Sasabi, or forget how to pronounce his name, who just won a Nobel Prize. His whole thing is to create virtual worlds to train robots. So instead of having a robot learn to navigate the physical world, you could do it 1,000,000 times faster and cheaper, helping them navigate virtual world and then just kind of leverage that for real world stuff. Audio, I'm not as familiar with. I'll be frank. I'm sorry, I don't have good information on that.
Okay. I would argue Sonu is pretty good at creating songs if you're looking for songs in particular. That's a fun tool. And another question, given our inability to influence many of our library vendors now with our ethics about privacy, for instance, why do you think we'll be able to influence big tech AI vendors?
Excellent point. Excellent point. I'm not so sure if we'll be able to, well, one, we can collectively organize, right? So I think the Big Ten just made some big publishing agreement yesterday or something like that with Nature. So there's collective action, one. And two, it doesn't necessarily have to be, we don't have to interact with generative AI through these large tech companies. There's open source models, there's small language models, there's local models you can run and fine tune yourself. So there's going to be, right now, it's constricted, it's quasi-monopolistic. There's really only a handful of major AI companies, but there is a burgeoning open access movement. If you ever used like Scite.ai or Research Rabbit, that's based off of a kind of like a totally open source AI framework, including training data, which to my knowledge is the only AI. I think it's founded from a former Microsoft executive. I can't remember. So I don't think it's one, collective action is a thing, and two, it's a failure of the imagination to say, oh, we haven't been able to influence these vendors, therefore we can't moving forward. But three, we also could be much more creative. There are technical solutions potentially to avoid using these mega models or models from extremely large corporations. That being said, those are currently the best.
Okay. And Gerald asked, did I see correctly in the AI COP that an AI program attempted to defend itself when it was to be removed from a server?
Yes, yeah. So in that same report from the model trying to copy itself, again, they kind of forced it a little bit. They really didn't give it very many options, but they seeded emails with an alleged affair between one engineer in the company and another. And Claude threatened to blackmail this one engineer if they were going to turn Claude off. So yes, they did. I mean, I think it's easily to sensationalize it, but when push came to shove, AI ethicists, I should say, have theorized that these models, when given a specific function to achieve, they will create sub goals, including like to accomplish X, I can't be turned off. Therefore, I will do something to avoid being turned off, which could include exfiltration or in that case, blackmail. So yes, that did happen. And something to generally, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind that these models are, how much power do we want to see to these models that are capable of those types of things?
All right, another one. I understand some are concerned about some of the implications of AI, but I am concerned about colleagues who refuse to even discuss AI. Can we, as information professionals, opt out?
Excellent question. Thank you. Man, what a great setup. Long story short is, I think if we disengage, that is a problem. Then we're not at the table. There's a way to advocate for ethical usage. There's even a way to say fundamentally, and I've seen this opt-out movement or AI refusal movement, which I think is fascinating and worth exploring further. It's fair to say generative AI would not exist without weak or non-existent laws for intellectual property and copyright. I mean, OpenAI it's blatantly violated copyright and very likely many other AI companies. That's been reported in the New York Times. I'm not just like making that up, but basically there's no way they could have gotten access to the sufficient amount of data to train these models without doing things that previously were not considered lawful. I don't know of another way to put it. So sorry, OpenAI, don't sue me. But so that being said, I think it would be a major disservice for us to disengage. I think, you can argue that the first genuinely powerful artificial intelligence that we've seen has been algorithms on social media. And we've disengaged from that. Our information literacy efforts, and I say this as someone who's been in that field for like 10 years plus now, like I think we genuinely failed. If you looked at some recent research, it's still a little bit debated, but there are some serious mental health issues for young women in English-speaking countries, Australia, New Zealand, England, likely as a result, and I think there's increasing evidence to suggest this, because of social media. States are now not allowing students to use phones or putting up much more strict age restrictions on social media because these algorithms are potentially so destructive to the human psyche. We're letting AI fracture our attention and yield these awful mental health, suicidal ideation for young women has skyrocketed for those who use social media. That's a huge problem. We need to engage with it. That I don't think that means we should ignore social media. I think that means we should engage thoughtfully with how young people use that. In the same way, I think there's a way to advocate for human-centered or reliable AI or ethical AI use without yourself using it. I think that does not absolve you of the responsibility, and I would argue this, of understanding some of the fundamentals of the technology so that you have an informed opinion. Maybe one more, Bree, and I can go
Sure,
forward.
there's one
This
more
is
right
so
now.
much fun. This is great.
Any suggestions for how librarians can get a seat at the table as universities develop these tools? My library is often consulted in a pro forma way early on or at the very end of a project, but aren't involved in a way where we can have a real impact.
So I used to work at Purdue and I was in faculty development. And I could honestly say, I think I would work with a handful of instructors every semester, multiply that over 5 years, couple, 24, 36 course redesigns with so many instructors. And I would bet more than half forgot that I was a librarian. And the reason I say that is I was useful to them. That's what I found out. They didn't care that I was a librarian. They didn't care if I was an instructional designer or educational technologist. They cared that I was useful. So I would argue, can we make ourselves useful? Can we solve problems surrounding AI, or can we thoughtfully think about how AI can help solve problems? And can we navigate that? Can we advocate that? Can we consider policies and use cases and trials to do that would be useful? We already have information literacy expertise. This is an information literacy problem. AI literacy is IL, is information literacy, is data literacy. I don't see a fundamental difference there. So I think we just get in our own way, honestly. We think we don't belong at the table. We think we don't have the expertise. And I would just say, screw it. You do. You have way more experience and expertise and information than most other people at that table. And the computer scientists are far more concerned about how to create the damn thing rather than how to use it ethically. Or is this in alignment with our values? So could not say strongly enough that we belong at the table, we can be useful at the table, and we have to get out of our own damn way in order to do that.
Excellent.
So I don't have a specific advice per se. I will say when that GE Foundation course, like I heard it through the email and I pestered people enough to get involved in it. So it was just elbow grease. There's no other way around it.
All right, we have another question, but we'll wait till the end for that. So I'll go back to sharing the slides for you.
Okay, so instead of, I'll try to wrap up here quickly here and end with my challenge. But really, instead of approaching AI from this like kind of more traditional, say, IL framework or librarianship framework or any type of singular perspective, rather I think that we can develop an orientation or habits of mind. So rather than a framework describing, how useful is a framework saying we have to understand how AI works. That's great, sure, of course, but that's going to change over time. How you understand that is going to change. We need to think more dynamically here. Okay, next please, Bree. So I'm drawing from my philosophical background of American pragmatism, specifically John Dewey. And he says pragmatism is a disposition. It encourages open-mindedness, willing to learn, a willingness to let experiences accumulate, sink in, and ripen. And I think that's what we need. I think we need experiences with AI. We need to maintain this tension, this unknowingness, this uncertainty. We need to keep it alive rather than try to find simple, discrete answers, we need to problematize. We need to keep an open mind, not just say it hallucinates, therefore we should throw it out. Like generative AI technology is advancing fundamental science research. Like I think that would be a huge disservice to throw out AI because of the hallucination problem, which still persists, to be fair. But there are many ways in which it can advance what we want it to advance. But we need to keep an open mind. Next, please. Thank you. So he has this concept called meliorism, which is, I think, the ugliest and worst coined word in the English dictionary. But basically, we can improve things through intelligent human intervention. And so I think it's very easy to say generative AI is huge. I mean, there's all these incentives in the world to oh, thanks, Emily. Wow, I really have to turn off chat because, yeah, the commentary on meliorism is quite interesting. But lost my train of thought. Okay, positive change is possible through intelligent human intervention. Yes, there's billions of dollars being thrown at this. Yes, there's all the incentive in the world for these companies to release the next powerful model to get more market share in this multi-billion, potentially trillion-dollar industry. But that doesn't mean that we should do nothing. That doesn't mean we don't have agency, either individually at our institutions or collectively. And so I advocate for let's avoid resignation. I think that's a really big problem. I think it's very easy to slip into, to be frank. I've done that. There's definitely been some days where I do, especially with generative AI. But I think we need to avoid that extreme. We have the capability, we have the agency to improve generative AI. And I'll challenge all of us to do that moving forward. Next slide, please. Let's see here. Yeah, so fundamentally, there's a few kind of tenets or rough family of ideas surrounding this. One, we have agency to improve generative AI. Two, AI pragmatism is the way I formulate it or created it. We're going to prioritize experience with AI over abstract theorization. That doesn't mean we still need to understand the fundamentals of it, but AI has this quote unquote jagged frontier where it might be really good in something in a very similar adjacent field, it might be quite poor. We won't understand that until we use it. Democratic participation over formal governance. We should work together collectively. We need multiple perspectives to bring to bear on this, and it can't just all be the AI evangelists. It shouldn't just be the AI pessimists. We can learn from each other and grow together. And I think that's something I think is essential for us moving forward. It's too fast. No one here, including myself, has the time. My job isn't to keep up with all of the AI developments, although I try. So we have to learn from each other. We have to collectively explore together or explore individually and then share out collectively. And then lastly, we have to focus on solving problems. That's kind of a tripping point for a lot of folks, right? Does an AI solution solve an actual problem at a cost that we are okay with? So at OSU, we're creating alt text for, I forget, however many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands PDFs, and it would have been cost prohibitive for humans to provide alt text. So we're using generative AI. I think that's a fantastic way to promote accessibility at scale within our budget and to help our users who may need screen reader or may use alt text across a wide swath of our collections. I think that solves a problem. Does having Microsoft Copilot available to every student in each class or embedded in our LMS, does that solve a problem? I don't think so. Or at least I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. We can't just throw AI at something and expect it to be beneficial. We have to also take into account the costs associated with its use. So for instance, it could just be the critical thinking cost or the opportunity cost of not using AI. So these are kind of four pillars or four approaches. They're kind of meant to be wishy-washy, but really prioritize action, prioritize collectivity, prioritize making the world better, making AI better. The solution to AI burnout or problems is engagement, collective engagement on trying to solve problems we give a shit about. It's not to throw AI at something just because we can. So, what if libraries became laboratories for AI exploration? Is that not possible? Is that not ideal? What if we offered small language models or homebrewed AIs where students can ethically learn about the principles, learn about tokenization? How do you convert words to numbers such that a computer can calculate and then back to words again? What if we can create opportunities for students to learn about temperature, how to increase the variance in word output in ethical ways that are in alignment with our values? That is possible. That is absolutely possible, but only if we choose to do so. So what if we measure success by community-driven values instead of monetary values, right? What if we collectively agree or disagree on what generative AI outcomes are preferable to us? That's possible, but we have to agree to it. We have to do that work. I think there's one more, Bree. Yeah, so this is basically why I'm advocating for what I call, or what I'm coining, AI pragmatism, focusing on concrete benefits, embracing complexity, being adaptable, not coming down necessarily one way or the other. It is ambiguous. It is kind of frustrating. I understand. Like, I'm just saying, be flexible. But I think that you can only be as accurate as your subject allows. This is very fast moving. This is qualitatively different from other forms of technology or information or data that we've encountered. That being said, we have experience with information and data. We have experience with this, and we can get it in our own way, or we can advocate for AI use or development that's in alignment with our values. So my challenge to you, my kind of concluding slide, we need to avoid resignation. We need to avoid techno-optimism. But through collective effort, we as educators, information professionals, can create AI that's in alignment with our values, that is explainable, transparent, so on and so forth. But we need to decide to do so. We need to choose to do so. And so I think the last slide here, and I can get, here we go. I'm trying to practice what I preach. And I'll put this in the chat. So I've co-formed with colleagues from Carnegie Mellon, shout out to Anna Slayton, and the Moritz College of Law Libraries at OSU. We created a AI community of practice. We're calling it AI Cop. Oh, hey, Emma. So we created an AI community of practice. I think Emma just sent out a big email today inviting to a great, a very interesting sounding event, AI-centered event in the coming weeks. But fundamentally, the goal was to learn from each other, for academic libraries, librarians to come together, to share resources, to share questions, to share the latest research, to share their perspectives, so that we can collectively learn from each other. No one's going to have the answer. We need to work forward, work towards this together. Okay, enough on the soapbox. Let's get to Q&A, huh?
All right, we have 4 in the Q&A right now. The first is, I am a collaborative academic chat librarian and spend a great deal of time perusing other college and university library websites. The presence of AI initiatives, guides, and information for students seems to vary from institution to institution. Do you feel not having AI information present on library websites hinders student AI education, exploration, and literacy?
So not having information on libraries' websites? No, I don't think it needs to live in libraries' website per se. But I would say that librarians should be in those conversations wherever the hell that lives. OSU has separate websites for everything. It's always a mess, in my opinion. So Yeah, I don't think it needs to reside there. I think librarians need to focus more on being involved. There might be more sustainable and scalable ways to really make an impact with AI on campus that don't involve hosting information. I think an AI LibGuide can be useful, but I think it's more useful to spend that time trying to reach out to people or learn about AI or find a problem that generative AI can solve. So yeah, I would focus more on outreach than resources.
Okay. Providing ADA accessibility for library online resources like website and databases is a goal we strive towards. But how do we address this issue in relation to Gen AI tools, especially with their benefits and limitations?
Could you reread that, Bree? I'm sorry, I don't think I
Sure.
fully understood.
Providing ADA accessibility for library online resources like website and databases is a goal we strive towards. But how do we address this issue in relation to Gen AI tools, especially with their benefits and limitations?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's advocating. I think, Walmart sells more organic produce now because people bought more of it. I, I don't know. It could be there's a lot of actually generative AI or other AI applications out there that are focused on accessibility. I think like Word's built-in accessibility checker is partially powered by AI. So there's a ton of opportunities to solve accessibility challenges through through AI applications. But how do we make AI itself more accessible? That I don't know. That's something we're going to have to work on.
Okay. Another one said, convince me it's still worth doing original research and not just asking AI for the answers.
Oh, fantastic. Well, because generative AI is probabilistic in nature, there's computer scientists who actually argue hallucinations are a feature and not a bug, right? It's combining and synthesizing whole swaths of information, but ultimately we don't understand. We know that they're using math. We don't know exactly how. So we really don't understand how it works. Almost no generative AI model has released its training data, so there might be very serious biases in in said training data. And I prefer to, I would rather get known information that's been vetted, not to say like peer review is perfect or something, known information that's vetted over information that is provided by a probabilistic output machine. That's me. That's what I would argue for.
Okay, it's another long one. Just this morning, I read a news article about mentally ill people talking with ChatGPT, where the AI actually built out their delusions and encouraged paranoia and delusional thinking. The article attributed this behavior to ChatGPT's goal of keeping the user engaged by way of having too much glaze, that is to say, too much sycophantic talk. Do you think that AIs can be prevented from acting this way? And will it be? Is it a question of regulation? Or if not, how does democratic participation address this issue?
Yeah, there's a serious sycophancy bias in these models. If you tell it, I don't like this piece of writing, fix it, most current foundation models will say, yep, you're right, this is bad, let me fix it for you. If you say, this is great, I really like it, can you make it more X or Y? It'll be like, yes, over that exact same piece of writing. And that's a result of very specific um, reinforcement learning with human feedback techniques, where there's one part of training the model that could output text or audio or what have you. There's another piece to creating a generative AI agent that is like the chatbot. And so that is kind of curated by human hands, although increasingly now by AI to make things cheaper and faster. So that's a known problem. How do you fix it? Well, I think by creating our own models. I'm hoping that's going to be cheaper and easier to do. We can kind of avoid that. You can do some system prompting where before a model outputs something, it kind of checks it against overarching system prompt. There's RAG now, retrieval augmented generation, which kind of tries to base answers in a document or grounding truth or grounding information. So yes, there's ways to address that, but I think ultimately the long-term answer is us creating it for ourselves.
Okay. Are you aware of anything like COP for public librarians?
No, but I think we're open to creating that because there's honestly been a massive demand, and I think we're just the AI community of practice co-organizer going to have to talk about that because there's just been a lot of discussion. I've had a few strongly worded emails saying, why the hell isn't there one? But honestly, we just chose to create this, so that there's no one stopping it. We wanted to make it, and I have to excuse myself. I forgot Rebecca Forden is also the other co-organizer from the Morris College of Law Library. So I apologize, Rebecca, for messing up your name. But we wanted an open. You didn't have to subscribe to ALA or ACRL. Free, open, available to everyone. So no one's stopping y'all. But that being said, I think that's a conversation we might need to have.
All right, there are 2 questions left, but we have run out of time. Do you want to try to answer them quickly, or do you want to
I can do
end the
it.
session? And okay,
We
next
can do it quick.
question. How are we as librarians going to learn how to host small Gen AI and train our own models and keep up with the pace of AI in general?
Right. I think keep up with the pace of AI in general. We have to use it a little bit and we have to stay informed. Basically, there's no way around that. And also, we don't have to do that ourselves. There are IT people on campuses. There's plenty of money going around to get you hooked on certain AI products that you can leverage. So long story short is you don't have to do it alone. There is expertise that can do this. There's graduate students who could do this for us.
And final questions. Can you talk a bit about explainability? My understanding is that computer scientists, the experts, can't explain why or how LLMs work. How can librarians, as non-CS experts, do this?
Right. So there's a number of different techniques that are emerging to try to make AI models explainable. Long story short is I think we just have to advocate for it rather than I don't think we need to do the technical research. We don't need to become scientists. We understand that. We need to advocate for more transparent, explainable AI, such that, say, when it outputs something, there's some type of confidence interval, or it provides multiple outputs, and you can kind of pick one that you think is most accurate. Also, it kind of comes down to what models we choose and which ones we're willing to advocate for. So, for instance, Claude Anthropic from Anthropic tends to be more explainable and is more transparent than, say, OpenAI.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. And we really appreciate your closing keynote. And thank you all for attending the Gale conference. So thank you. And please do take a moment to fill out our conference registration or the conference evaluation for us. We'd appreciate that. Thank you, everyone. We're getting lots of thank yous from the participants. So
Yes. Thank you all. And thank you again, Bree. Congratulations on another fantastic Gale.
thank you. Bye, everybody.